Over the last 10 years in the NBA, there has been a lot of trades between teams. There has been good trades for teams and there has been bad trades for teams. In today's video, we're going to be talking about the 10 worst trades of the 2010s. So we're going to be going over 10 trades that were just like, what are you doing? What happened? And it just turned out horribly for one specific team. Obviously, one team here actually had a good trade. So I'm just going to be focusing on the bad part of the trade. If you guys can get over 1,000 likes, I'll do another video of kind of 10 trades of the 2010s where both teams came out kind of victorious. Also going to set a ground rule here. I'm not going to be doing any trades where a team traded a pick for a player or to a team and they didn't make the selection. Like, there won't be any Donovan Mitchell Nuggets because we don't know if the Nuggets would have selected Donovan Mitchell. We don't know if Charlotte would have kept Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or the Pacers would have kept Kawhi Leonard, so I'm not going to be talking about those specific trades, and let's get into it. So quickly, before we jump into these 10 trades, I want to give 5 honorable mentions. First one is the Cleveland Cavaliers trading Kyrie Irving to the Boston Celtics for basically Isaiah Thomas and a future first-round pick from the Brooklyn Nets, which ended up being Colin Sexton. The reason I'm not throwing this in is because the Cavs ended up hearing from Kyrie that he wanted to get traded in August, so basically the offseason was kind of over, so they didn't have a lot to work with to make this trade. Also, Kyrie only spent 2 years in Boston and only spent 1 playoff run there, so it really didn't work out too well for either team. Next one is the Atlanta Hawks shitting out of the spot that ended up being Luka Doncic. Reason I'm not putting this in yet is because they ended up with Trae Young and Cam Reddish. Trae Young is an all-star already. Obviously, he's not Luka, but I think they're fine with Trae at this current moment, and who knows how these guys' careers can turn out. Maybe Trae Young wins a ring, Luka doesn't. This is only their sophomore years. The Rockets trading Kyle Lowry for a first-round pick. This was a bad trade for the Rockets, but hey, I'm going to give them benefit of the doubt because that first-round pick, they used that to acquire James Harden, which we'll get to later, but that's the reason why I didn't put this trade in the top 10 for the Rockets side of things. And then finally, we're going to have 2 Knicks trades. The first one is the Knicks trading Kristaps Porzingis to the Dallas Mavericks. The reason we don't know if this is a total L for the Knicks yet is because we don't know how those draft picks will turn out. And the next one was Carmelo Anthony to the Knicks. And the reason I'm not throwing this in as a top 10 worst trade of the decade is because Carmelo meant a lot to Knicks fans, and I think they would do that trade over again if they had to. Now, obviously, the Knicks could have signed Melo in the offseason, but who knows? Maybe Melo wouldn't have wanted to come to the Knicks. A lot could have happened. So I'm not going to throw that trade in this top 10. And let's get into this. So this isn't like a ranking the worst trade to the 10th worst trade, so don't have that mindset when I'm talking about these. So the first one we are going to be talking about is a trade that happened last year. Yeah, I decided to throw this one in over a maybe Denver trading Nurkic and a first-round pick for Mason Plumlee, or the Mavericks acquiring Rajon Rondo. It's the Washington Wizards trading Kelly Oubre and Austin Rivers for Trevor Ariza. Kelly Oubre has turned into a really nice young player and part of the Suns' future core for Trevor Ariza, who was a rental. He was a rental. They didn't make the playoffs. Why they make that trade, I don't get it. The next trade on this list is the LA Lakers trading a 2013 first-round pick, which ended up being Nemanja Nedovic, a 2013, a 2014 second-round picks, and a 2018 first-round pick that ended up being Mikal Bridges to the Phoenix Suns for Steve Nash. Now, Steve Nash only played 2 years on the Lakers. He played 50 games in his first season and 15 games in his second season. He ultimately had to retire due to injury, but in his 50-game season for the Nets in 2012-2013, he did average 13 points, 7 assists. He was basically 50, 40, 90 from the field. Yes, in 32 minutes a night, he was a solid player, but in the next year, played 21 minutes a night, only played in 15 games, and then retired. Just looking back on it, trading 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks for a year and 10 games for a 38-year-old point guard, probably not worth it if you look at it in hindsight. A couple years ago, the Orlando Magic traded away Victor Oladipo, Ersan Ilyasova, and Domantas Sabonis for Serge Ibaka. Serge Ibaka only played 56 games for the Orlando Magic before they ended up trading him to the Toronto Raptors. They ended up getting Terrence Ross in a 2017 first-round pick, which turned into Ajnas Pachnik, so it wasn't really a good time in Orlando for Serge Ibaka, and yeah, they gave up Victor Oladipo and Domantas Sabonis. You know who OKC used those 2 players to get? Paul George, who was an MVP caliber player in 2018 and 2019, and the Magic gave up those two players, or those two assets, for half a season of Serge Ibaka. Now, here's a big one that we talked about before, and is the OKC Thunder trading away James Harden, Cole Aldrich, Daquan Cook, and Lazar Hayward to the Houston Rockets for Jeremy Lamb, Kevin Martin, a 2013 first round pick, which ended up being Steven Adams, a 2013 second round pick, and a 2014 first round pick, which ended up being Mitch McGary. Now, the Thunder made this move because they didn't want to give Harden the max, because they didn't want to pay the luxury tax, but little did they know the NBA was going to get a TV deal, which blew up the salary cap in the NBA, and they would have been able to afford Ibaka, Harden, Durant, and Westbrook, probably without having to pay much in the luxury tax, even if they even had to pay in the luxury tax. One of the main assets the Thunder got in this trade was Jeremy Lamb, who played 3 years, his first 3 years in the NBA in OKC, and he averaged 7 points a game, 35% from 3, in about 15 minutes a night in those 3 years. Kevin Martin only played 1 season in Oklahoma City. He did average 14 points, 45% from the field. He came off the bench, but you basically traded James Harden for Kevin Martin, Jeremy Lamb. But yes, you did get Steven Adams, but in hindsight, would you trade James Harden if the most valuable asset you're going to get in return was a first round pick? And they didn't even get Steven Adams. They didn't get the first round pick to draft Steven Adams. But yeah, it wasn't a good trade for the Thunder. And if you're going to make a top 10 worst trade list of the 2010s, you had to throw in this James Harden Thunder trade. This one was in the beginning of the decade, and it was the LA Clippers trading away Baron Davis and a 2011 unprotected first round pick for Mo Williams and Jamario Moon. Now, you might be like, okay, like, what was that, just Mo Williams and Jamario Moon for Baron Davis? Like, that's not too bad for the Clippers. But no, that 2011 first-round pick went to the Cavs, and the Cavs ended up winning the lottery with that pick. And yeah, you know who they got? Kyrie Irving. Jamario Moon barely played for the Clippers. Mo Williams played a year and a half in the Clippers, and Kyrie Irving for the Cavs ended up being the second most important player on a championship team. Now, this one was just a head scratcher for the Sacramento Kings. The Sacramento Kings really wanted to clear some salary to sign Wes Matthews. So you know what they did? They traded away Nick Stauskas, their former lottery pick, Carl Landry, Jason Thompson, a 2017 first-round pick swap with the Sixers. That pick ended up being pick 3. The Sixers got pick 5. So, hey, they got to swap those picks. So now the Kings had the latter hand of that. And then they ended up trading a 2019 first-round pick, which ended up being Romeo Langford. The Kings got Arturas Gudaitis, Luka Mitrovic, and a 2017 first-round pick swap, which we just talked about. Now, actually, in hindsight, this pick swap wasn't too bad because the 76ers in this draft took Markelle Fultz at number 1, and the Kings actually got De'Aaron Fox at 5. So obviously, they would take Fox over Fultz, but the 76ers did use that ammo of that 2019 first-round pick and the 3rd overall pick they got from the pick swap to trade with Boston for number 1 to take Fultz. But yeah, Sacramento, what were you doing here? And yes, let's get to a New York Knicks trade now, where the Knicks, this one hurts just to even talk about, but the Knicks traded away Marcus Camby, Steve Novak, Quentin Richardson, a 2014 second-round pick, a 2017 second-round pick, and a 2016 first-round pick, which ended up being Jakob Poeltl, to the Raptors for Andrea Bargnani. Masai Ujiri absolutely fleeced Phil Jackson in this trade. In the year Bargnani got traded from Toronto, while he was still on the Raptors, he was averaging 13 points a night, shooting 39% from the field, 39% from 3, and playing horrible defense. In the 2 years he played for the Knicks, he averaged 14 points, 45% from the field, 30% from 3. He played 42 games in the year he came over from the Raptors, where he ended up playing 35 games the year prior. So actually, in his first full year with the Knicks, he played 42 games, and then the next year he played 29 games. So he was injury prone, poor on defense, and the Knicks ended up paying a first-round pick for that. It still goes down as one of the most what the F trades were you thinking? We have 3 more trades to talk about, and one you might be like, wow, I didn't really think this could have been one of the worst trades, but I honestly think it is. Now, we kind of talked about before James Harden, who's now a top 5 player in the NBA, getting traded for not as much as you thought the Thunder could get if they decided to move him. Now, in this trade, the San Antonio Spurs traded away arguably a top 5 player in the NBA at that current moment to the Toronto Raptors. Yes, we are talking about the Kawhi Leonard trade. The San Antonio Spurs traded away Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green to the Raptors. Arguably, those two players were two of the most important players on that championship team. Obviously, Kawhi was one. Maybe you would say Fred VanVleet, Lowry, and Siakam were 2 and 3. But hey, Danny Green was definitely a top 5 most important player on that finals team. And the Spurs got DeMar DeRozan, Jakob Poeltl, and a 2019 first-round pick. Look what the Lakers had to give up for Anthony Davis. Now look what the Raptors had to give up for DeMar DeRozan. Now yes, DeMar DeRozan was coming off an injury season. He didn't play. Obviously, he was just being kind of a drama queen behind the scenes. His value was very down. He requested a trade, but still, you would think that the Spurs can get at least like one nice young player. Hey, I would have taken Brandon Ingram over DeRozan, Poeltl in a 2019 first-round pick, which ended up being in the late 20s. Keldon Johnson, we don't know how it'll turn out. Jakob Poeltl is a fine big man, but he's not a starting caliber big man on a good team. And DeMar DeRozan is good and all, but he's not going to get you to the finals. We'll see if he opts in for the Spurs this year. But just looking at this trade in hindsight, you could have thought the Spurs could have got at least a nice young player to build around in this trade that they ended up shipping out Kawhi Leonard and Danny Green. One team we haven't mentioned yet was the Brooklyn Nets. Billy King made 2 horrible trades in his time in Brooklyn. I'm sorry, Nets fans. I'm going to have to throw this back when it was a much darker time for you guys. And we're going to be talking about 2 Nets trades from earlier in the decade. The first one was the Brooklyn Nets trading for Gerald Wallace, and they gave up Memento Core, Sean Williams. Okay, 2, like, not really 2 important pieces, but then they also threw in a 2012 unprotected first-round pick. And you know who that ended up being? Damian Lillard. Gerald Wallace ended up playing 1 season in Brooklyn. He averaged 7 points, 40% from the field, 28% from 3, and yeah, he was traded for the 6th overall pick, and the Blazers got a all-star, all-NBA franchise point guard for giving up a 30-year-old Gerald Wallace. Now, actually, Gerald Wallace did play 16 games the year prior for the New Jersey Nets. He did average 15 points, but his true shooting percentage was 53%, so he wasn't efficient whatsoever. And you know what? The Nets ended up trading Gerald Wallace to the Boston Celtics, and this is the final trade. You knew this was coming. You knew this was going to be the worst trade of the decade. Now, I didn't rank these trades, but if I had to put the #1 worst trade of the decade, it was going to be this one. It was where the Brooklyn Nets ended up trading for Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Jason Terry, DJ White, a 2017 first-round pick, which ended up being Kyle Kuzma, and they obviously threw that in the D'Angelo Russell trade, and a 2017 second-round pick in exchange for Boston receiving Keith Bogans, Marshawn Brooks, Chris Humphries, Chris Joseph, Gerald Wallace, a 2014 first-round pick, ended up being James Young, a 2016 first-round pick, which ended up being Jaylen Brown, a 2017 first-round pick, which ended up being Markelle Fultz, but obviously when the Celtics got the #1 overall pick in the draft, they traded down for Jason Tatum, so they got Jason Tatum out of that pick, and then a 2018 first-round pick, which ended up being Colin Sexton, and they obviously used that pick in the attempt to acquire Kyrie Irving. So for an aging Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Jason Terry, and a late first-round pick, Boston was able to get Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Romeo Langford, and a premier asset to trade for Kyrie Irving. That is the most lopsided trade in NBA history, arguably. So another trade I want to mention that I completely forgot to mention in the video was the 76ers side of things in the massive 4-team trade that went down on August 10th, 2012, that is known as the Dwight Howard trade. This is a trade where the Philadelphia 76ers traded away Andre Iguodala to the Denver Nuggets, Mo Harkless, Nikola Vucevic, and a 2018 first-round pick that ended up being Landry Shamet to the Magic in exchange for Andrew Bynum. And you might be like, oh, but they ended up drafting Landry Shamet. Yes, they did acquire that pick back from the Magic on the 2014 swap via Elfrid Payton and Dario Saric. So they got that pick back in that trade, but they basically traded an all-star center in Nikola Vucevic, or I should say a future all-star center, a really good wing player that ended up being Mo Harkless, at least a good defensive wing player, a really good NBA player in Andre Iguodala, we all know what he did in Golden State, and a first-round pick to get Andrew Bynum, who never played 1 minute for the Philadelphia 76ers. He got hurt bowling before he could ever play for Philadelphia. So yeah, that is going to be for me. I hope you guys did enjoy. Let me know in the comments your top 3 worst trades of the decade, and let me know any other trades you would have thrown in here that I didn't mention. Also, drop a like if you guys did enjoy the video. This one was fun to make and kind of reminisce on some of the darker times for some NBA teams in this last decade. But yeah, like I said, if you guys just hit 1,000 likes and want to see more of these, I'll drop a video where I talk about 10 of the kind of most win-win trades of the last decade for both teams involved, or maybe 3 teams involved. But yeah, that is gonna be for me. Thank you all for watching. I love you guys. I'll see you guys next video. Peace.